This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello, and welcome to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. That would be me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, on my new YouTube channel. Really excited to continue my discussions. I was gone for a couple of weeks because I've been moving across country, and you wouldn't believe all the things. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong, and I have hundreds of boxes that are calling my name to be unpacked, and probably stuff that we need to get rid of. But I always today I'm going to talk about something that I thought would be a little bit of a thought-provoking idea, how veganism harms the planet. And you think you're doing right things by only eating plants? Nope, not at all. But before we get started, I always like to start the first segment of my show with breaking news. You can't make this stuff up. And this is a little political, but I couldn't help myself. Former President Kamala Harris has this stepdaughter, Ellen Emhoff. And I think she was a model and a designer. I think she probably benefited from her stepmother's connections. And she now has climate anxiety. Oh no. She's 26 years old and she has lots of TikTok followers. And she said that how the past 4 years and her stepmother's election loss have sharpened her focus on the world around her. Yeah, also opened up a lot more opportunities that she had. But environmental change, she noted, stood out as a major driver of the torment she's been experiencing. Now, mind you, her stepmother lost the election for president in a pretty resounding fashion, but that apparently doesn't bother her. What bothers her is climate anxiety. Can we be any more shallow? And then she said, I think everything with the environment is really effing getting into me. She said in her video, I experience a lot of climate anxiety with an uneasy laugh, like I think a lot of us do. But her comments have sparked a wave of hypocrisy because she was seen purchasing, I think, clothes from a vintage store, which was good, using plastic bags. And just a detail that was made all the more striking, the fact that Kamala offered and was supportive of banning plastic straws. So here this woman has climate anxiety, but she uses plastic bags. And oh, by the way, Kamala kind of dropped her proposed ban on plastic straws so to focus on more usable options. Put up her little picture. I love this is my show, but here she is in front of a store, probably a vintage store, but there she is carrying her plastic bags. How lovely. So it's just kind of funny. And then she said, when Kamala dropped her ban, it was to be, in January, fans expressed outrage because Harris and her husband were also carrying plastic bags from the grocery store. And apparently this is really in contrast to California law, where you get a 10% fine for every single-use bags. So Harris's decision to walk away from her controversial position appeared to be a failed attempt by her campaign to make the Democratic candidate seem more practical. As we all know, Kamala changed her position quite a bit, and it didn't really help, did it? And then the next thing, keeping in the political tone of things, apparently support for renewables is shrinking as support for fossil fuel interests grows, and I have an interesting chart. And this is among both Democrats and Republicans. Imagine that. So observers blame culture wars on the Republican consultant said, but basically, as this chart shows, support for solar, wind and solar expansion has been falling among all these groups, including those who are Democratic, those who are independent, and those who are Republican. And the interesting part about this is that a professor of energy and energy economics at Yale said he was surprised. He sees this as a successful effort to link climate change and renewable energy to broader cultural war issues. But in the past, prominent Republicans supported renewables and sought solutions to climate change. But now it could be seen as disloyal to Trump. Maybe it's seen as something that doesn't work. Which is a far more realistic assumption. And much of the change of opinion has been driven by Republicans whose support for oil and gas grew from 35% to 67%. In addition, the Democrat support has grown as well. And while many of these things reflect Trump's policies, they don't always do that. And they said that some people actually support hydrogen and wind, which Trump opposes. But lastly, and this is the thing that's really interesting, and this is something I think we should be watching as we go forward, the support for nuclear power among Democrats has risen from 37 to 57%. Why? Because nuclear power actually makes sense. And it is probably in the long term one of the more sensible, practical ideas. But John was like, yeah, thank God she didn't get promoted to president. He's talking about Kamala. Yes, thank goodness. And maybe she was behind the auto pen. I don't know. But in any case, the Trump administration has supported nuclear, and you know what? More and more European countries are too. So I just thought it was really interesting that we have this shift, and they call it the cultural war shift, but it's really, I think, the world is becoming more practical. They've also figured out in Europe that all those solar farms take up a lot of good farmland. So they banned solar farms on farmland because they need it in Italy because they want to have the farmland used for growing crops, not putting up solar fields. And it's just so, as someone says, the worm has turned. And it is going to be interesting to see where the fallout is, metaphorically speaking, of where it's going to end up with it between the fossil fuel battle and the renewable energy battle. And are we going to end up somewhere in the sensible middle, which I think we should, like nuclear and natural gas? Those are actually practical solutions. One of the other things that has bothered me quite a bit, and I've spoken about it in a couple shows, is the fact that there's this push to electrify everything, but we don't have a grid strong enough to do that. And that actually increases energy prices for poor people. So I don't understand how that's a good policy either. But it is interesting to see how the political shift has happened. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching Dr. KJ, the KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hello, and welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. That would be me. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. I'm your host. And today I am talking about how veganism actually harms the planet. And it is scary, but it's interesting. So first, this whole notion of plant-based foods has exploded in the market. It is a growing market because I guess people don't really understand how the foods are made or grown. And it sounds really good not to be eating meat from cows and things. But guess what? Not so much. So first of all, I want to get a little background for you. Plant-based protein market is now growing steadily. Its market value is from 10 billion to 13 billion from 2022 to 2023. And it's going to increase to $34 billion by 2027. $34 billion in plant-based foods. From 2022, 36% of these vegetarian participants continued their vegan diets after signing up. So people sign up for vegan diets for a lot of reasons, but lifestyle was a motivating factor among 21%. But the interesting thing is that the fake meat products, or the Impossible Burgers, those types of things, are expected to be worth $6 billion alone in 23. And the growth is being driven by increased demand for plant-based meat alternatives, as well as developing new technologies to create realistic meat substitutes. But realistic meat substitutes are often created in a lab, which has its own ethical concerns. And frankly, I don't want to eat lab-grown meat. There's also a number of reasons that people might choose to eat fake meat, including ethical concerns about the planet, or they're worried about, oh, they're killing all these poor little animals, and it's mean to eat things with faces, and the environmental concerns about climate change, and then also the health concerns about cholesterol and saturated fat and all those things. Doesn't necessarily mean that vegan diets are healthier, though. Fake meat products are made from a variety of ingredients, and this is critical, including soy, more on that later, wheat, and pea protein. And I'm very leery of pea protein. I make sure my dogs don't eat that, because apparently pea protein is in a lot of dog food, and it can actually kill dogs. Isn't that lovely? But these products are fortified with vitamins and minerals to make them nutritionally complete. And some of the most popular meat brands include Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods. Costco has Impossible Foods, and restaurants, but plans to launch a retail product as well. But in 2022, I think there's a chart among countries that were surveyed, the U.S. was least aware of animal cruelty, and that's a whole other reason people talk about wanting to be a vegan. You want to put up the chart on animal cruelty? People didn't realize how, eating meat's cruel to animals. Well, it is if you don't kill them in a humane way, which I think is probably unethical too, and certainly not the way it's supposed to be done. But apparently they're worried about the animal cruelty. And then there's also another chart that talks about how much how much of the world is vegan. If you notice, a lot of the vegans live in the Asian Pacific region, which would be India and China, Africa and Middle East, and Latin America. North America and Europe, not so much. And it could be related to not only the fact that meat is more expensive, which is why North Americans and Europeans can afford it, but there's also religious issues. Certain Hindu branches don't even believe in eating anything. So except I don't know there, but there's Hindu is, and religious reasons are certainly a valid reason for being a vegetarian, not necessarily a vegan. But there's a lot of different reasons for that. But they said that in the United States, currently there's about 3% of the U.S. citizens that follow a vegan diet, and 5% are vegetarian. It's a difficult diet to follow, though. But then another really interesting reason, and probably a driving factor for people thinking that veganism is better than eating animals, is because a lot of animals are killed every year to provide meat for our tables. And this is true, and it's a startling statistic. In the U.S., there are more than 6 billion animals are killed for food alone. In chicken, that's 8 trillion chickens, 214 million turkeys, 126 million pigs, 36 million cattle, 23 million ducks, 7 million sheep, and over 3.7 trillion fish are killed. So that is a lot of animal deaths. I mean, it sounds horrible and it sounds gruesome. But the U.S. citizens also don't necessarily do that to become a vegan just because we're killing all these animals. They also do it because they want to have they're motivated by health benefits, and they think it helps the environment. We'll talk about why that doesn't. They have an interest in new products. They're concerned about animal welfare. They're also looking for meat-free diets for a variety of reasons, food security, and reducing allergies. And while those are all good reasons to not eat meat, it isn't necessarily what I want to talk about today is it's not necessarily that not eating meat helps animals. Quite the opposite. And the other thing is nutritionally, human beings are designed to be omnivores. We're designed to eat a balanced diet of meats and proteins and vegetables and all kinds of good things. We should eat, all the different fruits and berries, but we should also need meat for protein. And there's reasons that we should be eating meat and like fish and beef and those things for our own health benefits. Now, obviously, we want to make good decisions, and I'll talk a little bit later in the show about how farmers are actually doing good things. But the other thing is that so people, like many things, and it's akin to the climate industry as well, as John has said, in basically it is akin to these things, bandwagon effect. Oh, meat's bad. We must jump on the bandwagon and say all meat's bad, and we have to have meatless Mondays. And this meatless Mondays came out of a fact of needing to, it's part of climate change. If you don't eat meat, you're saving the planet, and because cows, have farts and they belch and they cause greenhouse gas emissions. So the whole push to get rid of cows and sheep and other animals like that is nothing to do with health benefits. It's really to do with under the guise of climate change and that cows are damaging the planet. When in fact, we found out that isn't true at all. Yet another fallacy. And yeah, you can put up the other chart too. Yeah. So here we are getting back to how much of the world is vegan. Yeah, we did these two charts. Okay. And that's the next one. So just stay put, Zach. Okay. But I'll talk about that next. But I just wanted to sort of say, you can take that chart down. But what I wanted to sort of point out is this whole notion of veganism is really, tied into climate change, which is why I decided to make it a topic for my show today. Because my show is supposed to be talking about energy, right? The environment. Well, guess what? Veganism is part of the climate religion, the climate change religion and practices. And as we start digging deeper into it, and I'm intellectually curious about these things, I realize that a lot of these thoughts and a lot of these supposed scientific facts are not true at all. So veganism is another form of the brainwashing associated with climate change. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching The KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. That's me, Dr. Katherine Johnson. And today I'm talking about the ways in which veganism actually harms the planet rather than helping the planet. And it's just an interesting idea to me. But here's some interesting facts that I didn't know about until I started digging into this. Plants require a large amount of healthy soil in order to grow the diets. So soil is really important. And then greenhouse gases are released into the atmosphere when the soils are constantly plowed and turned over to plants. This churning produces greenhouse gases that otherwise would be trapped in healthy soil. So the fact that they're doing all this kind of growing and monocropping is what they're calling it, where they're constantly growing food plants, it actually creates greenhouse gas emissions. No one talks about these things, don't do they? And then apparently another really startling thing was yesterday I was at Trader Joe's with my son who has a shirt on horrifying vegetarians. I'm like, that's not the shirt to wear to Trader Joe's, by the way. But it actually talks about how tofu, which is a staple at brands like Trader Joe's, said that according to the production of tofu is devastating to animals and the environment. Tofu, soy. So what it is, according to a report published by the National Animal Rights Organization, an estimated 3 million animals are killed each year to make tofu. Now, I told you about all the many chickens that were killed. Most of the animals that are killed to make tofu are chickens. What? Yes. The process of making tofu involves soaking and grinding soybeans and boiling them in water. The soy milk that results from this process is then curdled with a coagulant, which results often from the blood and bones of animals. Do any of your vegetarian and vegan friends know that soy has animal products in it? I don't know. It was mind-boggling to me. And the curds are then pressed into blocks to create tofu. So they're very, I'm eating tofu, I'm a vegetarian. Well, did you think about how that tofu was made? Probably not, and no one is telling you either. The majority of animals killed for tofu are chickens, as the soy industry is one of the leading causes of deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. Think about that. In addition, chicken are killed for their blood and bones. 200 million other animals are killed each year in the Amazon rainforest due to soy production. So as many as all the trillions of fish and millions of chickens and goats and things we eat, 200 million other animals are killed to produce soy production. This is terrible. These are including mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and fish, and it's having a devastating impact on the Amazon rainforest. So here we have vegans and vegetarians telling us how they're eating more environmentally perfect and they're better than we are because they don't eat meat. Well, when in fact their products actually do more harm to the environment than cows and chickens. And if you're concerned about the welfare in animals, this article says you should avoid consuming tofu. What? I know. And then the other thing is, and this is something I found very interesting, it's called the truth about veganism's hidden death toll, that they call it a death per calorie argument. And it highlights a complicated reality. Large-scale agriculture, especially monocropping, where they're growing one type of crop, covers 80% of the arable land worldwide and results in countless of unintended animal deaths. While avoiding meat may seem like to be compassionate, modern farming practices that support plant-based diets have a significant impact on wildlife. When a cow is slaughtered for beef, its one death provides hundreds of meals and lots of calories. But when fields are tilled, sprayed with deadly chemicals, harvested, and otherwise managed to grow crops like wheat, soy, and corn, countless smaller animals, mice, rabbits, birds, insects, and reptiles are inevitably killed. Their tractors crush them, pesticides poison them, the habitat destruction occurs, predatory prey imbalance, the forests are cleared for timber, which eliminates the homes for mammals and birds and insects and amphibians. Food chains are broken. So there's in the need to create soy and to plant soy beans to develop soy products actually destroys the environment and creates hundreds of millions of deaths of animals that we're not eating. They're killed in the production of making tofu. Where are the animal rights people here? How do they think that's a good idea? I think it's terrible. Anyway, and then another study was published, and it says that farming large monocrops like soy, beans, or corn or wheat are reshaped for human uses, and it costs animals their lives, even if it ends up being a burger, not a steak. The monocropping drives wildlife death, and it's growing a single crop. And soybeans, wheat, and corn account for the largest number of monocropping in the world. 70% of global cropland, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization. That's pretty scary. And then they are the primary subsidy source of soybeans are of plant-based proteins, and they may be considered efficient for farmers. Monocropping is actually quite disastrous for the environment and the animals, and the natural habitats are destroyed, and the animals end up starving to death. And the other thing is, a study published in the Journal of Ethology in 2003 concluded that producing wheat and other grains to serve a vegetarian or vegan diet results in 25 times more sentient animals being killed per kilogram of usable protein, more environmental damage, and a great deal more animal cruelty. 100 mice are killed per hectare, which is a little less than a baseball field, and an average yield of 1.4 tons of wheat per hectare is 13% of wheat produces. What I'm trying to say is they produce wheat, but only 13% of the wheat actually ends up being usable protein. So there's a lot of waste there. But in order to produce the protein, the 13% protein, 55 sentient animals are killed to produce 100 kilograms of usable plant protein. That's 25 times more killing to produce the same amount of beef. So yes, cows are slaughtered for beef, but as they provide hundreds of meals and calories, and they don't involve deaths of other animals or other creatures in the process. And yes, we should be humane in our killing. We should treat cows and sheep and everybody well. But you have to understand that the argument shouldn't be that plant-based doesn't automatically mean death-free. And that's something that I've always had a little bit of fun with my friends and relatives who are vegetarian, or my sister was a pescatarian, and she used to lecture me when I would eat my steak. But I pointed out to her that even though she didn't eat beef, she did have a $300 pair of leather sandals and a $400 pair of leather briefcase. And she couldn't really respond to that other than I try. So the point is, as much as you want to think that if you don't if you don't eat meat, then you're doing something for the planet, it's not true, because not only is the cow providing meat, it's also providing leather and all kinds of other things, including really delicious beef tallow for fries at Steak and Shake, and all other kinds of things. So the whole animal is used. And that's, I think, the best and the most sustainable and probably the way we're supposed to be doing it. Obviously, we don't want our animals tortured. We want them to be treated humanely. We want them to be raised well and treated well. But it is just kind of astounding to me that veganism kills more animals than being an omnivore or carnivore. I'm Dr. Catherine Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ, your host. I'm your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson. And today, eventually, I promise, we will figure out a way to have my very talkative guest, John, actually call in and ask questions because he does such a great job with it. But we're in the new process of, developing a new platform. So I'm going to be content to read the comments. And since I don't have John calling in, and I'll read his comments later, I did want to talk about something else that has sort of another layer of hypocrisy. Steve identified some hypocrisy with the Camilla's stepdaughter saying she has climate anxiety but has no problem using plastic bags, and that soy plant-based diets actually kill more animals than beef-based or meat-based diets. So I wanted to kind of continue this theme into this section where basically, and this is something I have been saying for 30 years, and I get in so much trouble in my energy community, even though now they're finally realizing I've been right. Most climate change scientists do not agree that global warming is happening. Whoa, isn't global climate change accepted by 97% of all scientists? No, it isn't. That's a huge misleading fact. In fact, there's remember Al Gore and the polar bears are dying in the Arctic, and actually there are more now more polar bears than there were 20 years ago. Go figure. So basically the notion that the world is dying, and remember Al Gore and climate change, and we're all going to die by 20 whatever, we're still here. But the whole notion that we're on the brinks of the apocalypse and climate change is a disaster waiting to happen is really not factually true. And even though scientists may think it is, they aren't climate scientists. They're not the experts. Just like saying I'm a doctor, I have a doctorate in business administration. I know nothing about medical doctors. I don't know anything about, I'm not an expert in, say, finance, even though I study business. So scientists basically have a very unique area of expertise that they get their doctorates in, PhDs, whatever. So most scientists outside climatology think there's global climate changing is happening, but most climatologists do not. In fact, there was a letter signed by 50 leading members of the American Meteorological Society. Now, I'm married to a weatherman. I know about the American Meteorological Society that warned about policies promoted by this environmental pressure groups, that policy initiatives derive from highly uncertain scientific theories. They're based on the unsupported assumption that catastrophic global warming follows from the burning of fossil fuel and requires immediate action. They don't agree. Those who signed the letter represent the overwhelming majority of climate change scientists in the United States, and there are about 60 of them. And they quote that the 1995 panel, the report that sort of set this whole thing into motion, the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, it's widely believed, they think it's true, is actually not true. Climate change the original document did not say that climate change is induced by humans. That was a takeaway developed by the policymakers. The summary, which became the take-home message for the politicians, was human beings are causing climate change. But that is not what the scientists said. And Frederick Seitz, who's the head of the former UN National Academy of Sciences, wrote, in more than 60 years as a member of the American scientific community, I have never witnessed a more disturbing corruption of peer review process than the events that led to that report. In fact, I've read his report. He did a great book, there's a big whole debate, the great climate debate. It's and he wrote a book, and they have actually documented in many ways how the climate change data were manipulated and misrepresented, and actually that they can't really attribute any climate change to human activities. It's minuscule. Climate is happening, changes, but climate happens, changes. We had a little ice age. Now we're probably warming. It's a millennial. It's a thing that takes millions and millions and millions of years. But of course, if you're a policymaker, you don't want things that take millions of years. You want things that happen now so you can figure out ways to have government policies to influence people's behavior and scare them. And for poor Ella Emhoff, create climate anxiety, which is completely unfounded. So they've created this false dilemma for political reasons, not based on scientific merit. And in fact, the Trump administration, you may like them, you may not, but they're actually reviewing and realizing that a lot of the data that they were put out by DOE and EPA were false. And they're trying to correct the record. I'm a big fan of having accurate scientific data, which is why I get in trouble in my industry, because I ask these questions and they can't answer them because they bought into the hype that climate change is happening and we better get on the bandwagon and it's a way for us to make money. And it's true. A lot of the work in the energy industry used to be having to trap how many greenhouse gas emissions were avoided for this particular product or that particular project. And it paid well, but it is sort of all assumptions and it's not really based on any other proven facts. Yes, power plants do cause pollution, but they're not the only cause of pollution. And not only that, it's really hard to say that because you don't build a power plant, you're avoiding deaths from children. I mean, EPA has a calculator, and I'm familiar with it, but it's a really convoluted, complex modeling calculator. And models are only as good as the data that are used to use them. My husband looked at the weather models developed by Livermore decades ago and found out that they didn't account in the climate change models for the effect of trees on climate, and the fact that trees love carbon, and the fact that oceans absorb carbon. The climate models that were developed in California at the elite institutions were not, did not take into all of the fact. It was like doing the benefits without the cost analysis. It was a very flawed analysis. Yes, John, that is the book that said that it was hot climate, cold facts or something. It was all the data were manipulated. Yeah, it's a great book. I'll have to figure out the name and I'll give it to you in the next segment. But the point is that climate change is hype, and it's been developed. And this is what they actually call this in France, watermelons. I actually heard a term from a Berkeley feminist professor at a meeting where they're green on the outside and pink in the middle. You can draw your own conclusions, but really it is just a front. And I know I sound like I'm some crazy lunatic person on a fringe, but I'm not. I'm really not. I've done my research for 30 years, and I'm a pragmatist. I love the environment. That's why I got in the energy industry in the first place. I love saving energy because I think it's the right thing to do. But when these policies get into mandating behaviors and saying that if you don't believe what we say, you're evil, you're akin to Holocaust deniers, then I get really angry and it's unfair. So I believe in a spirit of debate, fair, even, keeled, honest debate, not histrionics, which is what we have in the industry. And it's sad for me. Okay, I think I'm probably up to time. Yes, so I'm Dr. Catherine Johnson, your host on the KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. Today I've been talking about how veganism harms the planet, and there are some really interesting trends. And turns out being a vegan restaurant isn't necessarily a very profitable idea anymore either. There's been a decline in vegan restaurants because people don't want to pay a lot of money for expensive vegetables. They have trends in shifts in dietary preferences, and flexitarian means they only be vegetarians a few times a week. There's operational costs, and changing perceptions means that people that once wanted to go to vegan restaurants aren't going there anymore, and a lot have declared bankruptcy. And this has led to there's a Plum Bistro in Seattle couldn't make it, the Organic Village in New York, and one of the most notable restaurants that went all vegan during COVID was 11 Madison Park, which was considered at one time one of the best restaurants in the world, and it has 3 Michelin stars. And it decided to remove every single type of seafood, meat, eggs, and dairy from its menu. And instead, during the post-pandemic reboot, and it started to basically say they're no longer going to be able to savor the classics like they had beloved dry-aged duck with lavender, honey, lobster, and chicken. And the whole notion was because the chef, Daniel Hume, thought that it was really bad to eat meat, and he wanted to have a vegetable-forward, centric menu. I think we have a picture of the pea caviar. Anyway, they reopened. Don't we have a picture of that with the peas that look like the caviar? Anyway, he decided, this guy, the chef, and I'm a big fan of cooking shows, but none of this stuff sounds good to me. After the pandemic shutdown, Chef Daniel Hume revealed a completely vegan tasting meat menu with sunflower butter, mille-feuille without butter. Mille-feuille means 1,000 leaves, and it's basically a really good pastry. I can't imagine it without butter. Meringue without eggs. Almond milk ricotta, and by the way, making almonds kills a lot of bees. And land caviar. This move sent ripples into the New York dining establishment, and people were very angry. And eventually, people decided that they really didn't want to shell out $1,000 for 2 to have this vegan menu, because their spouses didn't want to go eat meat free. If you're going to spend that kind of money, they want steak and they want caviar and they want the luxurious things that you can get by eating a normal, regular old diet, or luxurious diet. The $1,000 dinner for 2, according to eater critic Ryan Sutton, is not going to change the world. It's not a redefining of luxury or something close to it. Omnivores have long been seeking out accessible yet ambitious vegetarian and vegan fare. And he based his mid-August meal doesn't appear to actually possess the palate acumen or cultural awareness to successfully manipulate vegetables and let them speak for themselves. There's also supposedly, like everything else, a secret beef room at the 11 Madison Park. Probably the only way they stayed in business, because 11 Madison Park made a lot of its money when you get the Wall Street bankers together with the Wall Street investors, and they're doing their big multi-million dollar deals, and they want to go have a steak and celebrate and spend a lot of money because they just closed a big deal. You can't do that with vegetables, which is probably why they had the hidden steak room. Anyway, so the menu's going away, and that's sort of sad. They said that, basically it was disappointing for wine aficionados too, because they couldn't enjoy a great wine if it didn't have a great steak with it. It is interesting that these restaurants, capitalist markets work. You can't expect people to spend thousands of dollars on a meal that doesn't have Wagyu beef with it, or this really great meat and really beautiful, luxurious ingredients. Truffles are vegetarian, but I'm not a big fan of those, but that's for another reason entirely. But the other thing is, there are pros and cons to living in a vegan world. I don't want to, slam people who do this for because they do it for religious reasons or good reasons. The thing is, that, people can choose not to eat animals, and that's fine. But they actually should be doing it the way it makes sense. And that the process, there is a way to ethically grow meat in a responsible and environmentally sustainable way. It's called regenerative farming. We have a couple graphics on that. It's that eating animals isn't unethical. It's just how are you treating the animals? And this is sorry, it's not very big, but basically it's a whole notion that you don't overuse the land, that you don't release all these greenhouse gas emissions like I talked to at the top of the show by overplanting and overtilling the land. You basically allow the soil to regenerate, and you allow the cows, you basically move cows around, and it's a very becoming very popular farming technique because it's the way farmers used to do it back in, I don't know, up until probably the 19th century, it's the way farms used to be, where you'd rotate the crops and you'd rotate the animals, and there's a natural life cycle. There's another graph that's better, that basically says that, you're allowing the land, the soil to regenerate itself. You're not overtaxing it, but you're also not growing just one thing. You're creating biodiversity, which is better for the planet anyway. And you're planting things that make sense in the season that they're being harvested. So there are, a lot of benefits to some people who choose to eat meat. But if we ended up getting rid of farming traditional practices, then we'd end up getting rid of animals, and farm animals can't be rewild. They can't go back into, they've been domesticated for centuries. We're not going to be able to have cows become bison on the open range. So even if we got rid of farms, it'd be a lot of animals that have to die. So there are strategies to be more environmentally friendly, and one of them is to be supporting these types of farms that are grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised animals that are raised on regenerative meat farms, that you're supporting a food system that actually heals the environment and not destroys it. You're also lowering the overall animal deaths because you're not using pesticides to kill mice and all those things. And this one doctor put it, eating well-raised meat is the most vegan thing you can ever do. That no one is perfect. Goal isn't purity, it's progress. And it's easy to think of, these kinds of choices in real world terms, but it isn't a real world. You have to think about where are the animals coming from? How are the animals being sourced? How are the animals being treated? And how is the farming should be done the way it was done when my ancestors came over here from Scandinavia and they did this kind of farming. This was the way it was done for centuries. And modern farming with big farms and big agriculture and the big soybeans that are farmers that are killing the Amazon, that's not good farming practice. So if you want to be a good vegan, eat an ethically raised animal. I love that quote. Okay. I think we're wrapping this up. I'll have one more segment, and so I'll be right back I'm Dr. Catherine Johnson, your host on the KJ Show with Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with Dr. KJ. I'm Katherine Johnson, your host, and I always love to end my little podcasts with fun stuff. And for those of you who don't know me, I am a huge dog lover. In fact, when my mother couldn't find me when I was a child running around the streets of this little town, she wouldn't call my name because I wouldn't answer. She would ask me, Catherine, what was the dog saying? I'd say, bow wow, and then she knew I was safe. So it was an International Dog Day about 2 weeks ago. And that actually celebrates dogs who need to be rescued from mission shelters. They don't want you to get dogs from the puppy breeder mills or the backyard breeders, but they want dogs to be rescued from terrible conditions. And you adopt a dog, and they basically want to empty the shelters. A lot of dogs are displaced during the natural disasters, the wildfires and the floods and the hurricanes and the tornadoes we've had all over the country. And so this International Dog Day was sort of say, find a dog in your shelter near you, rescue the dog, and you'll be very happy. And it's all about adoption from local shelters. And I used to volunteer at a local shelter out in Colorado, and those dogs are wonderful. These dogs are just the nicest creatures on the planet. And there's a reason, though, we have dogs. In fact, we would not have civilization if we didn't have dogs. And I've been a big fan of dogs my whole entire life. They've also demonstrated that dogs not only are good for humans, a symbiotic relationship, because of dogs we could stop being nomads and we could settle down and farm correctly, and the dogs would guard our flocks and guard our crops and herd our sheep and herd our cows and herd all of the different things. And that's why there's so many different breeds, because dogs were bred to do different jobs, like get rid of mice and terriers. That's what terriers do. So they also found out that dogs also reduce stress and anxiety. And I can personally attest to that. Numerous studies have demonstrated the therapeutic effects of dog companionship. The simple act of petting the dog triggers oxytocin, which is a hormone associated with bonding and relaxation, both in humans and canines. And this actually is a calming presence of a furry friend, helps to lower blood pressure, heart rate, and offering a natural remedy for stress. And this is true. First dog I had as a grown-up was named Bran, and she would look at me with those big, beautiful brown eyes, and when I was stressed out about something at work, and she'd go, "Come on, Mom, you need a walk." She didn't need the walk. I did, and she was right. Dogs also are good at promoting physical health because they do require exercise, which means you should be able to walk them and get some exercise. Unfortunately, my current dog, Barley Hops, is a little afraid of his new neighborhood, so we haven't been able to do very long walks yet, but we'll get there. And it also helps enhance social interaction and community. And that's true. Dogs are great icebreakers. They can spark conversations, they can foster connections and create a sense of community. In fact, when we got our first dog, Bran, we got it because my youngest has autism. And having a dog actually did help him become more social and more engaging and asking other people what kind of dog they had. It also taught him empathy and taught him understanding that actions do have consequences, and that when he screams, Bran doesn't like it. So dogs are really important on so many different levels, and we have a whole shared history. So I just wanted to say thanks again for watching. Remember, you can get my book, Handbook for Energy Savings, 7 Easy Ways to Save Energy on the Planet. I think we have a picture of that. And go on Amazon or go to my website, johnsonconsults.com, and order a copy. And if you let me know you order a copy via email, I'll plant a tree in your honor. All right. Anyway, take care. Thanks again, and I'll see you not next week, but 2 weeks from now. Thank you so much.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Catherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.